As promised, in the second clip we're going to see another world champion proving that exchanging pieces properly is a very important quality for any chess player, and especially for those who want to be successful. I'm going to show you a game played between William Steinitz and Johannes Zukertort. This game was played in their World Championship match in 1886. First match, second 12 game. I'm sorry, and Steinitz is going to have white pieces, Zukertort black. So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, knight f6, castle, knight takes e4. Long time ago, where when this game was played, the d4 move was not really employed. People just played the normally looking rook e1, and then after knight d6, knight e5 was usually played as here in this game. Of course, I should probably mention that knight takes b5 loses on spot after knight takes c6, and this covered check makes black simply losing the queen, so knight takes b5 is clearly not a move. And after knight takes e5, there is rook takes e5, bishop e7, and bishop d3, and this is actually quite often employed nowadays when people prefer to steer the games into some sort of tricky position, perhaps, as white tries to create some sort of a direct attack, and it's really important for black to know how to react, at least in the first few moves. Of course, this line is just harmless, and there's no advantage for white whatsoever. But this is still played sometimes. Bishop e7 is the move that Zukertort made, and here Steinitz just went for bishop takes c6, which I don't really think is the best here. Perhaps it was just better to take on c6 with the knight and then try to emerge on the slightly better pawn structure with and still maintain the bishop pair, because after bishop takes c6, d takes c6, I think black is quite comfortable. The only reason why I think Steinitz went for bishop takes c6 is that this knight on e5 is very active, and perhaps he just wanted to maintain some sort of initiative. In the game he went queen e2, and this sets a small trap. Of course, it's not good to castle immediately, because knight takes c6 is very strong, b takes, queen takes e7, and if rook e8, which seems to refute the whole line, then just white takes on d8, the rook cannot take on e1 because there is a pin, so after queen d8, white is basically up a pawn. So after queen e2 there was bishop e6, and after d3, of course d4 is not as good as d3 in this position, because after d4 black would be able to undouble his pawns at some point, because after d4 this pawn on d4 will simply be an easier target for the c6 pawn, and at some point black will be able to, for instance, even play knight f5, hitting the pawn on d4, and once white plays c3, then of course after castle, at some point black may just consider playing c5 and solve all of his problems. Nevertheless, I'm pretty sure this position is at least satisfactory for black, and after d3, knight f5, it's quite clear that black has the bishop pair, so if the position gets open, he should have the better chances. Also, black has a slight lead in development, and apart from this slight strategical problem, which is connected with a bit worse pawn structure, black is doing just fine. He doesn't have any weaknesses, and his position is generally very solid. It's also worth mentioning that castle was a bad decision once again because of a very nicely looking knight takes f7, and here no matter which piece black takes the knight with, white just takes back the material with dividends. So knight f5 was a multi-purpose move. Of course black wants to jump to d4 at some point, but also now the bishop on e7 is overprotected, so black is able to play castle in the next move. Knight d2. Even though knight d4 is a tempting idea, it's not really good because white will just go back to d1. Castle, then play c3. Knight b5, for instance, knight f3. And I don't really see how black could benefit from just transferring his knight from f5 to b5. I'm not really sure if c3 is any sort of a weakening. Until white plays d4, white is also very solid, and black cannot immediately solve his problems, at least. So I believe castle is a very logical idea. c3, rook e8, and yes, the bishop pair provides lots of activity, and I believe black is better actually in this position because of this space advantage. Also, it's not really clear what white is supposed to do in this position. Black is active, has all of his pieces developed, or at least most of them, because the rook is still on a8, but it's not a huge problem. The only hope for black in this position is connected with the fact that this position is still very closed, and as I said in the previous game, when the pawns are placed on both parts of the board, then usually the bishops are better, but at the same time, if the position is closed, the knight may as well be better. So white played knight e4, the knight on e4 looks very good, and so does the knight on e5. It generally seems that white also has some sort of activity, and black played queen d5. Bishop f4, rook a d8, so black managed to consolidate, and now there is some sort of a pressure on the pawn on d3. Black generally may want to play f6 in the next move and just win the d3 pawn. So white went d4, and here, as it turns out, c5 is not a good move because white just takes on c5, bishop c5, rook a d1, and the bishop on c5 will be lost. So this was not really a possibility, and instead of c5 in the game, black went knight d6. There was also another idea. Black could have tried f6, and after knight d3, knight d6, for instance, knight c5, bishop c8, but then knight b4, and we have a similar position to the one that we will see in a moment that was played in the game. Since the type of the position is very similar, I'm pretty sure the evaluation will also be the same. Let's just say that this is approximately equal, because white is still quite active, and any sort of an attempt connected with driving white's active knights away may cause black having some sort of difficulties on the queen side. So this is quite double-edged, I'd say. In the game there was d4 and knight d6. Of course, whenever you have the bishop pair, this is one of the guidelines I wanted to show you, to tell you about, you should try to get a position where the bishops are going to be dominant over your opponent's knights, or knight and the bishop. And the bishops are the strongest when they have lots of space. So here, basically exchanging the knights is a good idea. Of course, black could also exchange perhaps a rook to get some space, because here, even though black has the bishop pair, his position is a bit cramped, I'd say. And once there is empty space on the board, the bishops will definitely become very strong. So Zucker's strategy was connected with exchanging the knights and also play c5 at some point under favorable circumstances. Of course, Steinitz avoided that, played knight c5, bishop c8, and knight c to d3. This game is very positional at this point. It's it's rich in maneuvers. It's difficult to break through for any of the players, and any sort of an attempt, as I said just a moment ago, connected with making the opponent's pieces a bit worse may turn out to be inaccurate, as for instance, if f6, as it was played in the game, white just plays knight b4, and all of a sudden it's difficult to find a good square for the queen. If queen a5, white may just take on c6, b takes c6, knight takes c6, and once again it seems that white is practically winning here. So black had just just two options, as a matter of fact, queen e6 or queen b5 as it was played in the game. But after queen e6 there is a very interesting idea, knight takes c6, queen e2 is forced, rook e2, b takes c6, knight c6, rook d7, and here maybe not knight a7 because of bishop b7, but white can play rook a2 e1, and black's pieces look very tied down to the defense of the bishop on e7. Objectively, this should not be enough for more than a draw, but I think that after rook a e1, king f8 or king f7, knight b8 is very annoying, and this should be a draw after rook d8, knight c6, rook d7. Of course, black could try playing for more than a draw, but he should then remember that white already won 2 pawns, and it will never be easy to convert such an advantage. So black just went queen b5, queen takes b5, and knight takes b5. C takes b5 was a very interesting alternative, because now once again this pawn formation on the queen side is really peculiar, but it seems to be quite fine. And after knight e to d3, black could first strengthen the position with c6, preventing knight d5, and after some sort of, let's say, knight c5 move, black can just play a5, knight d3, b6, knight b3, and bishop f5. And I believe that black gained so much space on the queen side and also in the center that here he should have a very promising position and an advantage. Of course, it's always difficult to make a move like c takes b5 because it just looks strange, but as a matter of fact, it just helps black to expand on queenside, and this is what Steinitz should have, Zukertort should have gone for. So black went knight takes b5, knight e d3, and here once again black managed to get a sort of activity, gained some space, but he went wrong here because he tried to be active just a second too early, a bit too early, because he went bishop f5, and now he must have missed a very strong reply that Steinitz found. It was necessary to play a5, and after a5, knight c2, play bishop f5. Now the knights are not protecting each other, and after, for instance, rook a to d1, black may play a4, trying to play a3, just to be able to attack the pawn on c3. Also, white is unable to kick the knight from b5, and this position is very unpleasant for white. It's difficult to make a good move, and in the meantime black can just expand on the king side with g5. He may bring the king to the center with king f7, and his position is certainly more comfortable. So he went bishop f5, took retort, went bishop f5, and this is a bit premature, and the subtle difference is connected with the fact that white can just play a4 in this position, and then after knight d6, which was inaccurate, even though it was the most straightforward move, the better try was a5, lots of sharp play and dynamic counter chances. After knight d6, the difference is very clear. Now white can just play a5, and just a moment ago it was the knight on b5 that couldn't be attacked, and here is exactly the other way around. The knight on b4 cannot be touched, it cannot be attacked. White is threatening to play a6, and if black plays a6, white will just go back to c5 with the knight, and once again black's pawn formation will suffer a lot. So as I said, if a6, then knight c5, bishop c8 for instance, knight e6, and basically in all of the positions, if black is forced to take on e6, getting rid of the bishop pair, I'm pretty sure white should have an advantage. So in the game there was knight b5, which was met with a6, a very strong idea of course. Bishop d3 is the only move, because otherwise white just takes on c6. Knight d3, b6, and here white would love to go to b4 back to attack c6, but this was not possible, at least for the time being. But here it's already very obvious that it is white who enjoys the advantage, because now black was deprived of his main trump in this position, which was of course the bishop pair. So rook e3, preparing the occupation of e-file, king f7, rook a to e1, and here Zukertort made probably the decisive mistake. Here it was necessary to simplify the position. Once again, if you have less space than your opponent, try to trade off the pieces. Of course, you could find the right move in a different way. The bishop on f4 is a clear case of a good bishop, whereas the bishop on e7 is perhaps not a bad bishop, but is just a more passive piece, and therefore bishop d6 seems to be very logical. And after the possible exchange of the rooks, of course not bishop d6, because that just makes the position completely equal, but bishop e3, and white could still maintain some sort of an advantage. Actually, his position is still far more pleasant because he's threatening to play c4, trapping the knight, but this I believe would still be a better position for black comparing to what happened in the game. So Zukertort played rook d7, and this seems to be very logical, because now he allowed knight b4, the pawn on c6 is hanging, and it's difficult to untangle for black. Of course bishop b4 is not a possibility due to rook takes e8, and white is winning on the spot. So Zukertort tried g5, bishop g3, and f5. And here, well, I have this impression that back in the days people did not really calculate that precisely, and Steinitz missed a fantastic tactical opportunity. But at the same time, I can understand his approach towards this position, because what he could have played looks a bit risky, and you really need to be sure that you're going to convert your advantage if you go for a continuation like this. And I'm talking about knight c6. It seems to be counterintuitive. Actually, it seems to be just a mistake, because black can play f4 and white loses the piece, but there is knight e5 check, king e6, knight d7, king d7 is not a good idea, because then at some point the bishop on g3 is going to be taken, but white can first take on f4. After g takes f4, play rook h3. And due to the skewer along e-file and the fact that white may be threatening rook h6, black's position is very awkward, and it's difficult to find a good continuation. after most of the moves, white will just play rook h6, and the king will be in real danger. And I believe this is advantageous for white simply, although objectively, well, Steinitz's decision was a correct one if he felt that he knew what was going on, and if he felt that his continuation is something that he felt more comfortable with. So after bishop g3, f5, there was f4, but here Zuckertort got his counter chance, and he played c5. Now the problem for white is that d takes c5 doesn't work, because bishop takes c5, and the rook on e3, which was pinning the bishop on e7, now will be pinned with the king on g1. So knight c6 was virtually forced. C takes d4, c takes d4. The threat was to play knight e5, so black went king f8, sidestepping all of the ideas. And now rook e8, rook e5, knight d4, knight d4. It was possible to take on e7, but this is probably not that good, because after knight d4, bishop g takes f4, bishop f4, rook e4, bishop h6, king e7, knight b5, rook a4, knight c7, and king d7. It seems that white lost his coordination, and generally in such positions, in such endgames, when one of the players has a rook versus two minor pieces, the rooks very often are stronger, and here white really needs to be careful, even not to lose this endgame. So instead, once again, Steinitz went for the more practical knight takes d4, rook takes d4, rook takes f5 check, king g7, and f takes g5, winning the pawn, at least seemingly. Here Zuckertort tried bishop c5, which looks really dangerous, because now there's all sorts of discovered checks. But once again, what Steinitz did is very impressive. And once again, I'm going to quote the world champion the person who became the world champion later, Capablanca. Chess is a very simple game. You just need to know which pieces to where to put your pieces, on which squares, and which pieces to trade off. So here, basically, since white is up a pawn, trading off all of the pieces cannot be wrong. So rook takes c5, rook e1, bishop e1, b takes c5, and bishop c3, winning back the material, and of course the pawn endgame is winning. Since this may not be so obvious for you, I'm going to show you the rest of the game. So here, of course, in order not to lose the pawn, Steinitz went h4, king f5, king f2. Black is still quite active, so it's important not to go wrong, but the problem for black is that even if he manages to play king g4, white will just reply with g3, and white will be able to play king e2, as this pawn on g3 is poisoned, because if black takes on g3, white will just play h5 and play g6, and the pawns on the king side will not be they will just be unstoppable. So king e4 was the only move, but then king e2, c5, b3, stopping the pawns, king e5, king d3, and here king f4, and after b4 Zuckertort resigned, as it's quite obvious that the pawns on queen side are going to be lost. In the meantime, black cannot do anything on the king side, so this is a hopeless situation for black. So this game was very tight, very tense, and there was lots of pressure created on both of the players. And even though it looked like Zuckertort was in control, he just wasn't precise enough, and once Steinitz got the chance to simplify the position and exchange his opponent's bishop pair, he could transfer to a better position. Of course, Zuckertort had his chances, and if only he played more precisely. And now I'm talking about two situations. One of them when he could have taken on b5 of the pawn, which was a very counterintuitive choice. And second situation when it was really necessary to play a5 and then release the power of the bishops. Then if only he played one of these, if only he went right in one of these situations, he could have even won the game. And when Steinitz managed to neutralize his opponent's biggest trump, it was strategically already very difficult for Zukertort. I hope you liked this game once again, and thanks for watching. This has been Mateusz Kołosowski for Mind Sports Academy.